Good morning. Good morning. How the devil are you doing this one day? Isn't it lovely out, eh? Isn't it lovely out there? Although I was woken this morning by the sound of my next door neighbour vomiting on his drive. I don't know what caused that. Didn't like to ask. But good morning. I'm going to go straight to Gary Muirhead. Good morning, everyone. How are we all doing on this beautiful day? Gary, excuse me. I am firing on all cylinders. In fact, we've got so much going on in the show today that we're actually going to start the show before the show starts. It'll make sense in a moment. I think Dan Cullen was here first. He was here at 9:53. Good morning, guys. Another day living the dream in paradise. Good to hear. Mark Whiting is here as well. So there we are. There he is. Ken Hatcher with the weather report from Wales. Now, you know the weather report from Wales usually features quite a bit of rain. Not today. It is Scorchio. Jim 1977 UK over on Instagram just said, morning Mark. Good morning, Jim. Top of the morning to you. Sunny in Suffolk. Just trying to remember the name. There's a little town in Suffolk right on the coast there. Got its own brewery. Not that I had anything to do with it. Southam, is it? Southam, I think it's called. Lovely little town. Been there a few times. Chris Ford is here as well. Good morning, ladies, he says. I think he means you lot, probably. Jim Turner is here as well. Dan Cullen reckons it's too bloody hot. There you are. And Jim Turner in his agreement. Gary Muirhead says, nice wee T-shirt. What does it say? Yes, well, I will show you. I mean, Gary, you should know, because I think you bought it, didn't you? There you are. I have selective hearing. Sorry. You weren't selected today, and it's not looking good for tomorrow. And there we are. Jim over. It's actually James Lane. Sorry, James. It is Southwold, and it's Adnams Brewery. If anyone ever gets a chance to go and spend a bit of time over in Southwold, oh, man alive. Proper oldie English, and it's lovely. Really, really nice. Up to 26 degrees today. Won't affect me because I'll be sat here. But I think Fred's off playing golf today, so he's in for a treat. And there's Gary saying good morning to Dan. Now, two things. I'll do this one very, very quickly. I wrote yesterday over on Substack, on our Substack, why it is a good thing that Deconstruct has been given the job to demolish the Grenfell Tower. You can read that using the link that I've just posted in the chat. But I did say that we're going to start the show before this show, and that's exactly what we're going to do, bizarrely. I had a JCB press release this morning announcing that hydrogen-fueled construction and agricultural equipment has actually been given the green light to drive on UK roads. We'll have a chat about it in a minute, but they did send me very kindly a video. I've put my own music to it, and it looks like this. Let me just go through the chat very quickly. Chris Ford rightly says, bet it didn't drive all the way from Roaster. I bet it didn't either. James Lane over on Instagram says, great news for the ag machinery, especially as we were never going to get anywhere near with large machinery and electric power, he says. Dan Cullen is impressed. Cool at last. Wow, that looks awesome. Gary Muirhead says, and rightly so says, seems crazy the amount of hoops JCB have to jump through to get this amazing fuel and technology approved. Jim Turner enjoying the music. Dan Cullen says he's driving that wrong. Supposed to have the dipper out the back. I didn't even notice. And Ken Hatcher said, well done, JCB. I'm in agreement. Well done, JCB. Obviously, great news for them because they have invested about 100 million quid in hydrogen technology to bring it into the mainstream. And if this does prove to be the beginning of the hydrogen age, today or yesterday when they did that, it's a historic day indeed. But and here's where my cynical gene comes out. Given the current availability of hydrogen fuel outside a few small areas, does this not feel a bit like being granted a license to hunt unicorns? We've got the go-ahead to make use of this stuff, but we actually can't. Gary Muirhead says, is this only passed for around London or is it nationwide? I tell you what, let me go over to when I can remember my way round. Here we are. Historic day as hydrogen diggers get the green light to use UK roads. JCB today hailed a monumental government decision to change the law to give hydrogen diggers the green light to be driven on UK roads. Lillian Greenwood, MP, Minister of the Future of Roads, has signed a statutory instrument allowing hydrogen fuel construction and agricultural equipment to use the public highway from yesterday, 29th of April. And then there's a lot of stuff saying it's good news. I'd like to think it is good news, but I do wonder if it's a bit of a false dawn at the moment. James Lane says, how are the government going to tax it? They haven't thought of that yet. I bet they bloody have. I bet there's a little bit of the Treasury sat there going, ooh, right about now. No, folded up with 2 feet on it's fine. It will lock in both positions, says Ken Hatcher. Why dipper out the back, Dan? It locks off in the fully same thing again. Locks off in the fully folded position. And Chris Ford says, would like to try a hydrogen machine in the real world. Be interested in what the running costs were. Good point. And James is asking, why couldn't they use it before? Is it for safety reasons? I think it was purely a loophole in legislation. My understanding is, obviously, we can use HVO, we can use diesel, we can use petrol and various other fuels as well. But I don't think we'd ever actually made the request. Can we use hydrogen? Oh, we'd better go away and do a bit of thinking about that. And they've come back and they've said, yeah, that's absolutely fine. But congratulations to JCB. And, regardless of my personal cynicism, I think that's a big deal. Should we start the show 10 minutes in? I think we probably should. Let us begin with a bit of this. Yeah, just going to pop back to this very quickly. Gary Muirhead has just said, even at Bauma, they weren't allowed to fuel up on. That's the Hyundai stand. They actually had a hydrogen refueling station there and a hydrogen machine driven by Ben, the operator, Ben Wade. But no, they weren't allowed to refuel. I've still not got to the bottom of that. I can't tell whether that was a German thing, a Bavarian thing, or a purely Bauma thing. That they weren't. They had I think they had like 7 hours of hydrogen to last the entire week, which not much. I mean, in truth, it was largely miming, so it wasn't doing a great deal of work. But 7 hours for a a week-long show. Not a great deal, but it's a good point. You can see the question of the day there. I'll come back to that in a moment, but it is Wednesday, the 30th of April. That's it, April done and dusted. Welcome to the Breakfast Show. I am your host, Mark Anthony, the Walrus of Demolition, the Lord High Chancellor of live streaming. And in today's show, we're maintaining a low profile with Sandvik underground mining machines. We're going back to Bauma to check out the displays of both Epiroc and Develon. And in our latest Bauma Roundup, we're taking a closer look at the autonomous wheel loader displayed by Liebherr. If you were here yesterday, you'll know that I showed you about 90% of the Liebherr stand. We're filling in the gaps today with the autonomous wheel loader, which was quite a big deal. Plus, in today's morning monologue, by Mark's morning monologue, it's progress. But is it better? That will be the question. But before we get to all of that, we do have the small matter of today's mystery machine to attend to. So let's play this, and I'll show you what you've got to work with. Yes, I've made a light tweaking to the colour today. So it is not its natural colour, but it's not far off. I thought that might be enough to throw you off, but here we are. There is the machine I would like you to identify. We would like, please, a make and a model. Leave that up for just a second. Okay, well, we'll reveal a little bit more in just a moment, but very quickly, let me remind you of our question of the day. Yeah, our question of the day, as always, comes from our resident quizmaster, Mr. Gary Muirhead. And his question is this, and I have to say, this one really had me scratching my head for a while. Imagine, I don't know why this would happen, but imagine you've been given a late-night talk show. You have a bottomless budget, and you get to choose. So who would be your first guest? Now, personally, I was thinking Billy Connolly. He'd definitely be among the contenders. Always superb on Parkinson. In fact, he made Parkinson look even better than Parkinson already was. But personally, I'm probably going to choose Joanna Lumley for very different and very personal reasons. I'm going Joanna Lumley. But what have you got? What have you got in terms of guests? Dan Cullen, Mark Anthony, of course. Good Lord. It would be a very, very boring interview, I have to say. Let me go back to the mystery machine because we've got some guesses. Chris Ford reckons it could be a Daewoo 400V. It is not. Jim Turner reckons it could be Hitachi shovel. It's not. Dan Cullen going for the Cat 950 loader. It's not one of those. Going back, I'll show you a bit more of that in a second. But go back to the question of the day. Gary Muirhead says, that's a difficult one. Me, at least we could meet up at last. Or 2, Steel Wrist founder and the CEO. Or number 3, Marco Larini. You're going very much industry-based, are you? Okay, I can see where you're going with that. If we're doing that, I'd probably want Lord Bamford to pop along for a chat. Yeah, I probably would. I'd like to be the person, and I'm sure other people have done this, but I'd quite like to be the person to tell Lord Bamford, Anthony Bamford, son of, I'd quite like him to know, from me personally, how much he's done for JCB. And I realise that the name of the company still, belongs to his father, Joseph Cyril Bamford. That's JCB, and his dad did put it on the map. And if you believe the press releases, he did invent the backhoe loader and the telescopic hander and all that sort of thing. But Joe Bamford created a company that big, a really good company that big. Lord Bamford has created a company that big. I'd like him to know that. Lord Bamford, if you're watching, well done, mate. Please skip over the fact that I called you mate. That's probably completely inappropriate. Let's have a look. Mystery machine. We're going back to here. Dan Cullen reckons it could be a Lugong 856HE. It is not. Let me show you a bit more just to be fair upon you all. There you are. And as I say, don't be fooled by the colour. I have tweaked it just a touch. Just a touch. See what you can come up with. Let's make a start, shall we? Yeah, we're going underground in a moment after this. I'll do that in a second, but I do want to say very good morning to somebody with the best Instagram name that I've seen today. There is somebody watching right now called Phantom Fart 365. Phantom Fart. Good morning to you. Good morning to you. Yes, going underground, low profile machines and stuff. Have a look. I'm always impressed by those machines, but there's also a bit of me that thinks it must be done driving like this, with the roof that low down. Maybe it's just me. I can tell you, Mystery Machine, we don't have a winner, but we do have somebody that has basically hit the post. They've hit the post. Let's have a look. Dan Cullen goes for the I'm guessing that's a Doosan 300. It's not an XCMG 938 either. We've already done that one. It's not a Lugol. But Gary Muirhead has gone with this. He reckons it could be a Hyundai HL 970A. It's not. Bear with me. It's not, but you're that close. You're on the right path, Gary. Let me show you it again. I'll show you a little bit more. Not sure that helps at all, but see what you can come up with. Let me take that away. Gary Muirhead says it must mess with your eyes being underground a lot of time. I'm sure it does. Sure it does. Even for a short time, there's a couple of particularly long. I think there's one round sort of Dartford way. There's quite a long tunnel under the Thames. I think it's called the Dartford Tunnel. Drive through that, or drive through, the Swiss mountains, and you spend a bit of time, a minute or so underground, and the light when you come out really quite dazzling. I wonder how they get over that. Gary Muirhead, come on, Dan, I've started the balls rolling. And Dan comes back immediately with the Hyundai HL 738. It is not one of those. You're getting close, though, but you're not there yet. There you are. That's what it looks like. Dan is also going for the 955A. It is not one of those. You're getting ever closer. There's a bit more just to keep you entertained while I press the next button, which is this one.
If you are enjoying this episode, please consider supporting the show. You can leave us a tip at buymeacoffee.com/demolition news.
Yeah, we've got several back-to-back revisits to Bauma, and we're going to start with a look around the Epiroc stand.
Driving the future of construction at Bauma 2025. you for joining us at Bauma 2025.
Yeah, and see all that beer? That was about 10 o'clock in the morning. I do have a video, which I haven't edited yet. I filmed it mainly to give you kind of a sense of scale. So there's a bit where I walk the length of one of the halls, which took me 4.5 minutes. And then I walked back past all of the food and drink stands. I'll play it for you at some point in the not too distant future. I can tell you, on our mystery machine, we have had put it into football context. You have hit the post, you've hit the other post, you've hit the crossbar, you've had it cleared off the line, you still haven't scored a goal. Let's have a look. We've got this from Dan. The Hyundai 955A. It's not. Chris Ford reckons the 955 XT. It's not. It's not the 940A. It's not the 780A. It's not the 960A. It's not the 985A. It's not the 940 ATM. It's the other one. Let me show you a bit more. There you are. It has a wheel. Keep the guesses coming. You're very, 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 very close. Gary said, is Fred still up to his eyes in Bauma footage? Oh, is he ever? Yeah, I mean, he's drowning, I think is probably the word. I mean, literally, he gets out of bed, sits there and starts, and that's where he sat till about 2 o'clock in the morning. So still loads to go through. I tell you what, I'm going to call it. I am going to call it. It's not a complete answer, but it's as complete as we're likely to get. Mystery Machine, we have a winner, and it is Mr. Ford. Mr. Ford, I'm going to give that to you. Put 3 points against your name. It is the HL 930A. It is. Funnily enough, that was at 10:23. And then about, well, I don't know, 20 seconds later, Dan Cullen also got it. But I can tell you definitely that Chris rather, got the right answer. Let me show it to you. There we are. That's how I made it look. That's how it's supposed to look. It is the HL 930A. Well done indeed, Mr. Ford. You've had a couple of wins this month, haven't you? Three wins in a single month. This is a new record for Mr. Ford. Is he a new contender? Gary Muirhead certainly thinks so. He says, congratulations. Good morning to Joe Brown Construction Company, all the way from the US of A. And while we're talking about the US of A, I've always quite liked Canada. Never been, but I've always quite liked Canada. But their election result yesterday, didn't that make you happy? Certainly made me happy. Chris Ford says, well done, Gary, for putting us on the right track. Or wheel, as the case may be. Dan Cullen says, well done, Chris. Good man. Yep. Magnanimous in defeat. Well done indeed. And Dan, being slightly sarcastic, says, you're picking up on it, Chris. I think he is. I think he could be the dark horse of the entire show. We're going back to Bauma in just a moment with Develon. After that.
Since the finance bill came into effect in April, the construction industry has seen a surge of fuel thefts. The rising cost of living has placed an additional risk of theft by employees and contractors, as well as opportunistic thieves. By using diesel dye and placing warnings of its use, you are sending a clear message that this is your fuel.
Going back to our question of the day, which is, if you were a talk show host, who would be your first guest? Jim Turner says, Keir Starmer, Sir Keir Starmer. I'd love to time in knots with questions. Well, if you're going down that road, I'd quite like my first guest to be Donald Trump, mainly so I could kick him squarely in the balls a lot. That's just me. That's not an example that I'd like to set anyone, but that's just my own personal feelings. We gave you a very brief look around the Develon stand. Beginning of the week, I think it was, when we were talking to Jan Braberda, their product specialist for demolition. Well, we're going to take a bit of a wider look around the Develon stand right now.
Welcome to Bauma 2025. The world's largest trade fair for construction and mining machinery is here, and Develon is ready to bring you an unforgettable experience.
Pretty good stand, right? I'm going to say good morning to Raf Edwards over on Instagram. Also, good morning to Dean Ring, if that is the Dean Ring of a Ring Demolition. Good morning to you, sir. Give my regards to your brother, would you? Haven't seen him in quite a long while. Let's have a look. Gary Muirhead says the Develon pork pie hats look cool. I didn't even spot those. I'll go back and rewatch that. Can't believe I missed a pork pie hat. I'm gutted now. Dan Cullen says working on concrete. Well, bearing in mind a lot of the Messermunchen display area is basically generally car park, actually. Dan reckons that they should have kept the Doosan brand. And Gary Muirhead says, fantastic to see young kids and children at these big events. Yeah. And there was no, I mean, I'm sure there were safety restrictions, but there were literally babes in arms up to teenagers, particularly on the Bobcat stand. There was a group there. I don't know whether they were from a school or a college, probably 16, 17 years old, big group of them, 20 or 30 of them, but children all day, every day, absolutely everywhere. And all of the exhibitors really accommodated them. The organisers accommodated them, and they were no problem at all. UK exhibitions, take note. Take note. What have we got? Was an okay video. Well, I thought it was a bit better than that, actually, but there we are. We've got one more film to show you, which is another revisit to the Liebherr stand. Back after this. If you were here yesterday, you'll know that we took you for a guided tour of pretty much all of the earth-moving and mining equipment on display on the Liebherr stand at Bauma. But we cut it short. We cut it short because there was another film that I needed to bring along, and because it works as a standalone, we've done it as a standalone. In amongst all of the mining machines, the electric machines, the demolition machines, the hydrogen machines, there was a part of the demo area given over to an autonomous wheel loader. And it looks like this. Right. So, a couple of things. Dan Cullen. Yes, I did see this news yesterday. See, the Yanmar autonomous machine is going to be working at Manchester Airport. It is indeed. Dan enjoyed the tune. That's a cool shovel. Gary Muirhead. I want to address this one first and foremost because it does lead in quite nicely to our morning monologue. Still blows my mind to watch these big bits of equipment moving around without anyone behind the controls. Wow, is this really the future? So, a couple of things that I learned. We are producing a video where we've spoken to the designer or the developer behind that system. Incredibly impressive. Okay, so it does things like, I don't know if you noticed, the second time it went into the pile, there was a bit of wheel spin. It can understand, the machine can understand that and adjust the power through the wheels accordingly. So there's one thing. It never approaches the pile in the same at the same angle ever. Much the same as you wouldn't if you were driving that machine. It has basically been taught, okay, well that's where you'll get the biggest bucket load this time. That's where you'll get the biggest bucket load next time. Maybe your next bucket load needs to be around there. So it does all of that. But you will notice that for all of that, there is still a cab on the machine. If you saw on the top of the cab, there's an array of lasers. They're constantly scanning the site and making calculations of hazards to avoid and things like that. But it still has a cab, and it has a cab so that a man or a woman can still leap behind the controls, because there are some jobs that human beings can still do better. And one of those, bizarrely, bearing in mind that, Liebherr are up in Germany, but basically Germany, Swiss, Austrian border. So they're up sort of mountainous and they have weather and stuff. That autonomous machine can't figure out snow. Snow appears as a completely flat thing to an autonomous machine. So they have still got the ability for somebody to jump behind. So if you're clearing a road, for 1 month of the year, you can still put a human being behind the controls and do what needs to be done. And then the rest of the time, you can have that working in a quarry, for example, doing its own thing. I have to say, very, very, very impressed. Kind of goes without saying, bearing in mind it is Liebherr, because Liebherr don't actually do things by halves, not in their nature. I'm going to go back to this because this has triggered something else in my head, and I'm not entirely sure I'm big enough to do this. Gary Muirhead says, this show is a lot like a talk show, and you're the host there asking questions. I watched a thing the other night, and it is a YouTuber that I actually particularly like, and he had, I must admit, I'd never even come across the term before. He hosted what he referred to as an AMA live stream. And AMA stands for Ask Me Anything. So rather than coming on and talking about a specific subject or showing a particular thing or playing a particular game, as a lot of live streamers do, he just basically turned up and answered questions from the audience. I don't think I'm anywhere near big enough, interesting enough to actually do that. But it did make me wonder. It did make me wonder. And to be perfectly honest, I think most of my stories I've probably shared here already anyway. But yeah, listen, if we get bored one day, maybe we'll do a bit of that. Maybe when we get around to doing our mammoth show a bit later in the year, a marathon. We've got 4 hours to beat. So maybe a bit of that would come in handy. If you can start thinking about questions you would like to ask, hopefully not too personal, then give that some thought. Not like some autonomous machines, no gadgets all over the place. No, there's not. Lots of lasers, lots of very high-tech stuff and what have you, but very, very smart indeed, as you'd expect from Liebherr. Anyway, there we are. Gary Muirhead says, the Breakfast Show Q&A. If you've got enough, I'm more than happy to do it. Question today, for stand-up sound folks, I'd go for Will Harris, Guy Martin, Keanu Reeves, and Miriam Margolyes. I'd have Keanu Reeves on, just because he seems like such a nice bloke. Such a nice bloke. Yeah. Okay, Miriam Margolyes, just for the swearing. I'm in agreement with that. Anyway, what are we, 38 minutes into the show, and that is pretty much it for the main part of this morning show. I'm going to roll the outro in just a second before leaping gazelle-like into my morning monologue, at which point all the mentions of technology will start to make sense to you. If you can't stick around for that, please stay safe. Look after yourself, your family, your friends, and your colleagues. I hope to see you again very soon. I'll be back here tomorrow for more of the same, 10 a.m. UK time. Till then, everybody, stand by your beds. I'll be back after. Progress and innovation do not move in a straight line. They don't travel neatly from point A to point B. They're not linear. In fact, it often appears that progress is random, leaping forward in one area while stagnating or even regressing in another. Humankind has evolved sufficiently to send men and women into space. They've walked on the moon. Man-made craft have explored the outer edges of our solar system. And yet, there are still vast stretches of the Earth's oceans that remain unexplored. We're still documenting newly discovered animals and plants that have been right under our noses for millennia. In the field of medicine, we can perform life-saving surgery on a baby that's still in its mother's womb. We can transplant kidneys, lungs, livers, and even hearts from one patient to another. We've cured a multitude of deadly diseases. And yet, the common cold prevails. We've evolved to become the dominant species on Earth, and yet, for all our supposed intelligence and brainpower, we can't stop a single wasp from ruining a picnic, a plague of locusts from destroying our crops, or mosquitoes from spreading deadly diseases and being the biggest killer on the planet. And here, in the field of demolition and construction equipment, we are, frankly, no better. We've developed machines that can reach higher and dig deeper than anything our predecessors could have imagined. Machines that can lubricate themselves, fuel themselves, diagnose their own faults, and send a sick note to the nearest dealer detailing exactly what's wrong with them and how to fix it. We've got machines that can be operated remotely by someone sitting thousands of miles away. We have machines that can dig holes, lay bricks, and pave roads, all without human hands touching the controls. With advances in electronics and machine control, we've reached a new level of precision that would have seemed like magic just a generation ago. And yet, our road paving and muck shifting activities are still very much at the mercy of the weather. A downpour, a frost, or an unexpected heat wave can still shut down an entire site. We've yet to devise a telescopic handler, site dumper, or articulated hauler that isn't perpetually teetering on the edge of tipping over. We've yet to devise a safety system that can't be overridden, bypassed, or ignored entirely by a determined operator. We've yet to create a mini excavator or a skid steer that's easy to get into, or an excavator that's easy to get out of. We've created sophisticated camera systems that allow operators to see in 360 degrees. Some machines even provide a bird's eye view, stitched together by software from multiple angles. And yet we still have machine cabs riddled with blind spots, thanks to chunky columns, split windows, and about 47 competing in-cab display screens shouting for attention like a cockpit designed by committee. We've evolved from machines that virtually anyone with a spanner and some common sense could maintain to machines that only a fitter with a degree in nuclear physics and a sonic screwdriver can fix. And let's not even talk about parts availability, where a broken sensor made in one small town in China can shut down an entire fleet of machines across the UK for weeks. We call this progress. We pat ourselves on the back for our technological achievements. But progress in our industry is often lopsided. It's cosmetic progress. It's progress where convenience is sacrificed for complexity, where safety is bolted on instead of built in. The truth is, we've confused innovation with evolution. We assume that because something is newer, it's better. But newer is not always smarter. More complex is not always more effective. And digital doesn't always mean more dependable. There's a lesson here, one that reaches beyond construction and demolition, beyond machinery and technology. It's a lesson about human nature. We rush to conquer the skies before we've understood the soil beneath our feet. We celebrate the future while tripping over the flaws of the present. We worship progress but forget to ask, progress for whom? Progress to what end? Maybe instead of marveling at what our machines can do, it's time to start fixing what they still can't. Maybe real progress is not about the next machine, the next update, or the next app. Maybe real progress starts when we stop chasing what's possible and start focusing on what's actually useful. Until then, we'll continue to build marvels on muddy ground with fogged up camera lenses, temperamental control panels, and operators wondering why a machine that can talk to space can't just give them a decent cup holder. There you are. That's my thought for the day. Progress, but is it better? That would be my question. Let's have a look. Stefan Edwards has just joined us. Morning, it's Stefan. How are you doing, my friend? Good of you to join us. Hope you're fitting well. I don't know why I pushed the microphone away. I haven't finished the show. I apologise. Stefan Edwards, good morning. I don't know why I shouted that into the void, but good morning. Thank you very much indeed for being here. So yeah, when you, I mean, I listen. I walked around Bauma, eyes wide open, mouth agape because of all the new stuff that was there. How much of it would actually improve the lot of the operator, the fleet manager, the construction or demolition equipment, demolition company? I wonder. We started the show with talk about hydrogen. And listen, as somebody that loves a bit of new tech, I'm all for hydrogen, mainly because it gives me something to talk about, something to write about, and I'm all for it. As it stands at the moment, and congratulations to JCB on getting this through Parliament, we've now got permission to drive these hydrogen-powered machines on UK roads. Have we actually stepped forward? My personal belief is we haven't. Until there is a widespread availability of hydrogen, we've got, as I described at the top of the show, I don't know where this came from, but we've basically granted ourselves a license to hunt unicorn. We've got the means, but we can't actually do the thing. What do you reckon? Jim Turner. Jim Turner says, true progress is false through trial and error, but overall false state-imposed progress is very rarely progress at all. And I wonder, I mean, I know you're talking about state forced and state imposed and everything else, but what about the manufacturers themselves? Now, listen, I'm not going to tread carefully because I think they know me better than that. We do rely on some of the manufacturers to basically keep us fed and clothed because that's where our advertising comes from. But when they come up with a next generation machine or a Dash 8 or a Dash 9 or a Dash 10 or a GTX version of their machine, how many of those actually serve the user? Take, for example, the complexity of onboard systems. And I'm going to use Jim as an example here. Jim is a practical guy. You go back 20, 30, 40 years. I know Jim's not old enough for that, but you go back 20, 30, 40 years. Your average operator, your average fitter with a sledgehammer and a spanner or a set of spanners could fix pretty much anything. Today, you need a laptop to diagnose what's wrong with it, and then you need somebody with a degree in electronics to actually put it right. And then once you've put it right, it's not a case of, okay, I fixed it. You've then got to reset the sensors and reset the software that controls the sensors before you can go back to work. Is that actually progress? As I say, as a gadget lover, as a bit of a closet technologist, I love all that stuff. I really, really do love all that stuff. But if your job is basically to move a lot of muck as quickly as you possibly can, if your machine went down 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, you'd break out the wrench, you'd break out the sledgehammer, you'd have a bit of a fiddle around, you'd give something a whack, you're back to work. Now, and yes, I take on board telematics and the fact that they can diagnose their own faults, but by and large, you've now got to wait for a dealer to come to you to put it right, to fix the sensor, to fix the software that feeds the sensor, to make sure that everything's hunky-dory. What have you lost there? 2 hours, 3 hours, a day, a week if you're working somewhere remotely? Is that progress? Electric machines. Again, I will state for the record, I believe that electric machines most definitely have a place. I love the quiet, I love the efficiency and everything else. But if you fill up a diesel machine, depending on what you're doing, depending on what the machine is, you probably get 2 days out of that without having to worry about refueling at all. If you are running an electric machine, you are probably operating with one eye on what's out the front of your machine, whether you're digging or loading or dozing, and you've got the other eye on the fuel gauge or the battery gauge to find out how much juice you've got left to get you through the day. And the chances are that at 4 hours, 5 hours, 6 hours, you will have to stop what you're doing, park that machine up, whack a lead up its back end, wait for it to charge before you can go back to work. Yes, it is quieter. Yes, it has no emissions. But is that progress? And is it progress, particularly given the fact that that juice that you've shoved up its back end may well have come from an unsustainable fossil fuel burning source? Is that progress? Yeah. There's my thought for the day. I'd love to get your feedback on it. Love to get your feedback on hydrogen as well. I am meeting up with Dan the Man, Colin, and Mick Saunders over the weekend, just for a bit of a chinwag, because my wife is away. But my wife is only going away for about 3 or 4 days. A bit later in the year, she's actually going away for a week. So I'm planning to do a marathon show. I'll let you know when it is, just as soon as I can remember when it is. But we're going to try and beat our record. We've done 4 hours before. We'll do it on a Saturday, so you can duck in and duck out, and we'll just see if we can top 4 hours. Just I don't even think we need guests. I don't think we need content. I think we'll just turn up and have a bit of a chinwag and see how that pans out. I'll keep you posted on all of that. But keep the again. I mean, I know what did he say? Yeah, there. Well, Gary Muirhead said about the idea of a breakfast show Q&A. If you fancy doing that, I'm more than happy to do it. More than happy to do it. As you probably gather by now, I quite like the sound of my own voice, even though I wish my accent was a little bit less South London. I'd be more than happy to sit here and answer questions if you have some. Could I do it unfiltered? Yeah, I probably could. I don't care what I tell people. I am an open book, I think. Right, people, that will probably do us for today. Don't forget, for a bit more reading on Deconstruct, getting the nod on Grenfell Tower, you go over to, I can actually put this in the chat because I have the wherewithal. There you are, Demolition Insider. It's demolitioninsider.substack.com. You can go and read that. It is behind a paid firewall, but if you're a member, you can read it anyway. If you're not a member, you can get a 7-day freebie. So you can go and read that. It's proved very popular. Well, the article has proved very popular. Whether the sentiment behind it is popular, frankly, is a completely different business. That will do us for today. All of that aside, nope, nothing else to tell you. I'll be back tomorrow for Thursday show, 10 a.m. Jim Turner says progress would mean the electric machine will make more money for the owner over its lifetime. Right now, I don't think that's the case. No, neither do I. I mean, I think there are moves. I think as batteries get more efficient, as they last longer, as they can be charged for, if they can operate for longer, a working day and that kind of thing, I think that will improve. I think when the batteries become more widespread and the cost of those batteries comes down, so you're not paying 1.5, 1.6, 1.8 times the amount for an electric machine than you are for a diesel machine, I think that will change that situation as well. But as it stands at the moment, if you're looking at sort of true lifetime costs, despite the fact that your charging costs are somewhat lower, I do agree with Jim. I think there is still a ways to go. It will happen. It will happen. We've watched battery technology improve in other areas, and I'm sure it will continue to improve in the field of demolition and construction equipment. But I don't think we're there yet. Much the same. I mean, I mentioned I was taking the piss when I mentioned the idea of 47 screens. You think about all of the various systems we have in a machine these days, and I remember Peter Haddock coining the term cab clutter. You've got the built-in 7-inch display from the manufacturer of the excavator, but you've now got one for the tilt rotator, you've got one for the GPS, you've got one for something else and something else. And yet we're talking about all-round visibility of a machine. Is that really a step forward? Jim says, that's why diesel-electric hybrids should be the current way forward. Yeah. I mean, I've never got to the bottom of what the take-up has been. I mean, I've seen a fair few in the wild, particularly Komatsu hybrid excavators. Seen quite a few of those in the wild. And I've driven a Kobelco. I've seen a few of those out and about as well. Not entirely sure what the take-up has been. If anybody's got any idea on that, I'd love to hear from you. But that will do us for today anyway. We're nearly at the hour mark, and I'm sure we've all got better things to be doing. Going to say a very quick good morning to Blockade Group, Blockade Demolition over on Instagram, who have just pitched up in time for me to say goodbye. Timing is everything, fellas, I'm afraid. I'll be back tomorrow, 10 a.m. for more of the same. Until then, everybody, have a fine and splendid day. I'll see you tomorrow. All the best.